Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Political Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood. I am joined by the host of the Dollop podcast and also a recent winner of the Political Vigilante game show in a heated contest against Gareth. Or no, did you lose?
I won.
You won. That's right. Gareth.
I would not lose to Gareth. Come on. Come on. He had a little lead at the beginning because I was letting him fuck around, and then I just took him down so hard.
That's so great. That you punished him on a live stream. Yeah, that's right. You won handily 10-6. Gareth had nothing in the late rounds. He couldn't even come back at all. And he didn't even understand the strategy of like, you're losing, so you just need to raise your hand first and throw out something to have a chance.
That's right.
And he didn't even know how to do that.
No, he's a dummy. By the way, this is vegan. It's water.
Oh, vegan water. I love when they put that on. Yeah. It's gluten-free. Oh, really? There's no wheat gluten in water? Wow, thanks. I had no idea. Well, Dave, we wanted to bring you on the show. First of all, just to celebrate everything that's so great. If you're a progressive lefty socialist, everything is going our way. And
it's so great to tell everybody what's going to happen, and then it happens, and then they just yell at you for saying it was going to happen.
Yeah. Wasn't it great a year ago is when Bernie bailed? Wasn't that great to celebrate that? This is our last hope.
He dropped out like someone had a gun to Jane's head.
Yeah. I mean, literally, the rumors are they threatened there's some scandal against her and they were going to prosecute her and put her in jail which I wouldn't be, because the way he dropped so hard, I'm like, and he wasn't perfect. We all knew this. He was just the furthest left of any mainstream candidate that had a legitimate shot. Yeah. He dropped so hard. I was like, I literally was like, did they threaten his grandkids? I wasn't joking. I'm like, seriously, did they go that old Bill Hicks joke of like, the president gets elected and they show them the real Zapruder film and they're like, any questions?
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
that's how it seemed. Yeah.
Like Bobby Kennedy thought he had a shot too. Yep. So
I don't know how that turned out. I don't read history.
I think he just dropped out. I think he just said, I'm out of politics. I'm a Kennedy. Politics really isn't our thing.
They don't care.
They don't care. So it's been a fantastic year. And we are now thank God, the one thing that Biden is doing well is rolling out the vaccines. He said he was going to do that. Yeah. Okay, I'll give him credit. He's getting a lot of people vaccinated. It's
literally the only reason I said to vote for him. Like, I know that he's going to create a more fascist state, but he's also going to get the vaccine out. That was always the thing. He was always going to have a better response to the fucking bullshit that Trump was trying to make money off of. And, you know, Trump, when he ran out of storage, which his companies were taking care of for the virus, like he was funneling the storage money to himself. That's why all of a sudden they stopped, because he's like, well, who else is going to do it? I don't want someone else to make money. I mean, that's why he didn't order enough vaccines. He's just a fuckhead. So, like, yeah, everything's going to get worse under Biden. We're still on the same track, just going straight to fascism. But right now, there would be 700,000 dead people and no end in sight if Trump was still in office. I mean, it would just be crazy.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And literally, and we said this last spring and summer, we're like, if Trump, when the virus first happened, I'm like, if he handles the virus correctly, he won't lose. I mean, if he would have said, here's stimulus money, it's really, hold on, I'm getting it. Scroll still says show starting soon. Oh, let me change this real quick. No, but that's absolutely, had he handled it correctly, had he given everybody UBI and Medicare for all, it would have been like, he's not going to lose.
They would have been changing the laws to make him a third-term president right now. Like, he would have never been out of office. If he had just said, lockdown, this is really serious, let's get all the tests in shape, let's get everyone ready for this, he would be an emperor right now. Like, he would have slaughtered the Democrats.
Yes. And you know, but he bungled it. And that's the main reason people voted for Biden. It was like, nobody was excited about Joe Biden. Nobody was like, well, they were just like, now. Yeah. Oh, God. Well, before we get into the greatest rescue of poverty ever lie that this bill, I mean, like, okay, really? Before we get into that, and we'll break that down a little later, I wanted to talk to you because you live in LA and you are dealing with, like a lot of parents are, schools opening and the insanity that is going on with that, you know. And I understand. I mean, I don't have any kids of my own, but I understand, like, oh my God, my kids have been homeschooling for the last year. Everybody's cabin fever, crazy sick. But like, because there is we're seeing a little light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccines. And it's like, initially Biden said July, now it's June, maybe even May. And I believe him because I see how quickly they're rolling this out, but they're opening up way too soon in so many other ways. And our stupid two-party system makes one party, in this instance, the Republicans, going, we're going to stick it to Biden by opening early. No, you're going to ruin the lives of your citizens in Texas, but go for it. I mean, they already, you know, they just went through a crisis of having the grid go down. But,
you know, Democrats are opening up early also because Biden made the 100, you know, we got to get kids back in school in like 100 days or whatever it was. And then, you know, the thing people aren't talking about is the testing companies are lobbying for this because standardized testing happens in April, and they want those kids in the fucking schools because you can't test at home. Then it's what? That's not testing. So they want the fucking kids in school. And so a lot of this is a push by Pearson and these other goddamn companies, which the testing is just already shouldn't be happening. I mean, it's just fucking garbage. The teachers can't look at the tests. If they look at a test, they get fired. The kids never know what their scores were. The teachers don't know what the scores. It's just fucking nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And so they're pushing to make those tests happen because they want kids in school to do that.
I didn't know that, but it's typical of this dumb country. It maddens me and then goes, oh, well, that makes sense. They're doing another dumb thing because capitalism to the rescue to ruin everything. Like, we're not doing, God, we have no society. We have no, like, what's for the greater good. It's just, hey man, Pearson needs to make their money. So jam these kids and teachers back in school and let's do it. So damn it. It's so frustrating, but like, kind of watching, you know, like I said, I don't have kids, but you know, LA Unified School District is a massive school district. Yeah. And I'm watching them on the local news, that the head of that LAUSD talk about how they want to do this. And some of the teachers, you know, it's kind of some teachers and some teachers union said, I'm not going back until I get vaccinated. Yeah. Which I get.
It's also, it's a fucking month away. What are you fucking rushing? They've been out for a fucking year. Now, all of a sudden, a month away, you're going to let them get vaccinated.
Right.
It's just around the fucking, what are you rushing for?
I know.
There's testing. It's the only thing I can think of is testing.
It's crazy because, like, yeah, it's just a month. Just wait. What, like you said, we've all been here a year. What's another month? Like, what's another 60 days? I mean, literally, like, I feel like a convict, a long-term convict. That's like, I can do 60 days standing on my head. I can do this dumb pandemic for another 60 days. I know how to do this. Like, boo-hoo. I'll wear my mask and stay inside and talk to myself in the dark. I mean, what the fuck else am I going to do? Like, so
there's this whole narrative that's been formed, which is that all these kids are having mental health issues because they're home. Well, are they having mental health issues because they're home? Or are they having mental health issues because their uncle died, or their fucking mom died, or because they're watching society send their parents to shitty fucking jobs with no protection? Maybe that's affecting their mental health. Maybe looking at the news and seeing 500,000 dead is affecting their fucking mental health. And it's not about being on a computer during the day, which is what they fucking do all the time anyway. Like, there are also, if you talk to other parents, there are kids that are thriving online because they didn't like school. They didn't like getting up at 7 a.m. because they have this thing called zero period now, where some kids have to get up at 7 a.m. and go to fucking school. Now they can sleep into 8:30, like the science says they're supposed to do. Kids are not, you hit 11, 12, you're not supposed to get up early. Your body doesn't want it anymore. So there are kids adjusting to this and they're thriving, and you're not hearing that at all. but there's a ton of them. I read about them all. I'm in a parents group. I read about them all the time. Kids that were getting bullied, kids that didn't fit in. They're all doing better. All of them. And so this narrative is all the kids are having mental health problems. And it's like, what about those fucking kids at East LA where just death is just fucking rampant?
Right.
It's like one of every 400 have died. Like, it's fucking crazy. They're having mental health problems because there's death everywhere and the society isn't doing anything. It's not because they're on fucking line during the day. And so that's the narrative that's out there because that was pushed by right wingers. And so the Democrats did not fight it. They just went, yeah, okay.
What?
Yeah.
The Democrats didn't fight back? I mean, is that the first time?
It's really amazing.
Well, yeah, there's so many good. I didn't even think about any of those things, but those are such great points, especially like in these hard hit communities like East LA, which is primarily Black and Latino. That community, not only one of the reasons they're being hit so hard is there's a lot of working class people in those communities that they don't have they don't have a nice job. They can just Zoom in from home. They got to get on a bus and go to work and deliver stuff and flip burgers and whatever and clean houses and all that frontline worker stuff that we're all celebrating. Well, they had to they've been going to work this whole year. They've been having to wear masks and then that's why they get hit the hardest. And then also too, you bring up great points. Why the mental health thing, a lot of those families, they have multi-generational homes. So what, the grandpa and grandma died in their living room or whatever, or they went to the hospital and they were there for 3 weeks and they never got to see them. And then they just got the call, their dad's dead. Whatever. And their dad died because he had to go to one of these jobs.
Yeah, we have a house cleaner, and when COVID hit, I told her, you're staying home. I'm giving you a raise. I'm paying you every week, and you're staying home until we're safe. And I hope all your the other people you work for do the same thing. And so I would just give her money every week, and she stayed home, and this went on for months. And then in November, she got it because she had to go clean fucking people's houses, but they don't have health insurance. And she's not here legally. So her whole family got it. And since they don't have health insurance and they can't afford to go to the doctor, they use this old tea mix that has been going around in Mexico for years to clear you out. And that's their health care. That's it. An old mix of tea that clears out your lungs. And she said it totally works. She's like, it's actually amazing. It does work. But one of them could have died because she lives with her father-in-law and her husband. And that's what they're dealing with. And so if you're a kid, she has a, I think 11-year-old kid. If you're an 11-year-old kid, are you more stressed because you're online at school or because your mom is going to a job that could kill her?
Right.
Where's your mental health in that situation? Is it because you're learning math on a computer? No. It's because you're fucking worried your mom's going to fucking die.
Right.
And the fact that narrative is out there is just, it's fucking mind boggling. It's like just letting the right wing run away with this fucking nonsense. And the other reason they do it is because a lot of Democrats want charter schools. They're in the charter school pockets. And this can destroy public schools completely. 100% destroy them. That's the end game. Take them out. Make them all privatized, make them all charters. And so that's why the Democrats really aren't sticking up for it. I mean, some of them are in the union pockets and the other ones are in the charter pockets, and a big fucking split down the middle. It's really fucked.
So, and that's just heartbreaking. And these are also such great points. And so, yeah, it's the other thing too, is they've done studies, this is well before COVID, that only 30% of kids like this going to classroom, old learning model that really was designed to just train you to be a shift worker in a factory. I mean, that's literally what it was for, right? I mean,
they've changed it around now. If you looked at how it all works, I helped my kid with this math homework because I was a math tutor, but the math is just garbage now. It used to be you would solve a problem and then you'd be like, oh, I figured out how to solve that problem, or I didn't. But there's an end game. You try to solve the problem. Now they're like, can you write this equation in 4 different ways? And you're like, what the fuck is that? What are you taking away from writing an equation 4 different ways? Oh, you know what you're taking away? When you're working on an iPhone and you're trying to figure out a bunch of different ways to do something, that's what you're taking away. They're making them business-minded little fucks. That's not analytical. It's just figuring out different ways to do shit so you can go and work in your white-collar job in an office and figure out a bunch of different ways to do shit. It's fucking crazy. And that's Bill Gates. Bill Gates pushed all that shit into the schools. This is all his fucking bullshit. This is his plan. What he's been... It's amazing to watch. Like it's just fucked. I mean, the whole system is fucked. And we're such big supporters of public schools, but we're also talking about pulling them out. Like it's just really fucked.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big supporter of public schools. I went through public school. I mean, I think, and that used to be like the backbone of America was like you got free public school. Like that was such a new concept. A lot of countries you had to pay for school. We get free, like K through 12, it's free. And now it's just eviscerated. And of course, anytime they're like, well, privatization will make it better. No, it'll only make it better for the 1%. Like, shut up. Yeah. Privatization has never helped working class people ever.
No. Yeah. All the studies on charter schools that have come out, they're bad. They have not helped anybody. They're making things worse. Every study is just like, no, it's not working.
And so what are you seeing now as a parent? You have an 11-year-old son who's been, going to school at home the last year. What is happening in the specific school district that you're dealing with? And what are you seeing?
So I'm in Glendale United. We're sort of, I live up on the hill, and Glendale's down in the valley, and there's a big split. There's a lot of there's a big Armenian community, and the Armenian community in Glendale is split. Like there's sort of a new immigrant wave that came in, and they don't see head to head with the older, more long-term Armenians here. And there's a bunch of Trumpers, particularly amongst the newer immigrants, tons of Trumpers. And so they don't believe in the virus, and they hate the unions. And so we've got that dynamic. And I think that dynamic is playing out everywhere. That's what I've been reading. It seems like to be pretty normal. So the school board is mostly Armenian, and they seem to listen more to the Armenians down in the valley, which is this is just shit. This is how it goes. Like, this is just fucking life. Like you're part of a community, but there's a voice that gets a bigger response, and it's weird, but it is what it is. So a lot of them are, particularly at certain schools, are just super against COVID. They just don't fucking believe in it. And we've got 2 or 3 people on the school board that seems like they don't believe in it on the school board. And so there's this weird, it's a very weird dynamic here with all these different factions coming out against each other. But what happened was everything was going fine. Like everyone's online, going to school, and teachers work harder in this way they're teaching. It's harder for them than it is to go to a classroom. They have 26, 30 kids on a screen as opposed to just having them in a room. It's much more difficult for them. They're working harder, and these parents are yelling at them. And then we had a school board meeting. I didn't know about it. Well, the Trump people and the open school people just went fucking apeshit against the unions at this meeting. Just person after person saying how fucking lazy the unions are, how shitty the teachers are. Like it was like a fucking lynching for 45 minutes. And nobody who, like me, I didn't think we were going back to school this year. And so that sort of turned the tide. And right around this time also, Newsom was trying to get schools opened up again. For some reason, Democrats have just decided schools need to be open, and not 5 days a week. It's this hybrid plan. So you go 2 days a week or 1 day a week, and half the kids are still at home and they're teaching in the classroom at the same time, which makes it super complicated because teachers don't know how to do that. I mean, could you imagine doing a stand-up show for people in a room and then online also? It's just what is that? And they have to interact with them. And so the teachers all over the country have started to do this, and they're saying, this can't be done. We don't know how to do this. So Newsom is pushing for that. There's a little bit of pushback from teachers unions, and we're in LA County, so we have to follow the LA County health rules, the health department rules, but we're not in LAUSD, so we don't have to follow the big union and all that stuff that's going on there. So after this meeting with all this screaming, we get an email from the superintendent, and it says, we're coming back to school on March 23rd, the day after spring break. Very smart. Very smart. Because you know, when people take holidays and stuff, there's no increase in COVID spread. Like, that's never happened.
No, there's no pattern of it the last 12 months. We're good.
And the email says, we're opening up. You have to choose right within 4 days whether your kid comes back to school. And if you say no, your kid cannot come back to school for the rest of the year, no matter what happens. So even if everyone's like magically everyone's vaccinated, all the teachers are vaccinated, like if some miracle happens, we can't. So we have to make a choice. And on top of that, there's no explanation of how they're going to set up the schools. There's no safety explanation. There's nothing. It's just make a fucking decision and fuck off. And so everybody flips out. Everybody completely fucking flips out. And they're like, what in the fuck is this? People are like, how do I even respond to this? I don't even know. You're not giving me any information. And the school is just like, we're opening up. That's it. We're fucking opening. And everyone has no idea what's happening. Newsom's trying to push his bill through the legislature, and the legislature is like, no. But then there's all these Democrats and right wingers who are like, we need open schools now. The kids have mental health problems. And it just goes on like this for like a couple of weeks. Everyone's yelling at each other. The community now is torn apart. People want to fucking kill each other, because now it's gone from just being like, okay, we're in this place, we're all trying to work through it, to like, now everyone's opposed to each other. Now we have all these people want to go back and just put their kids in school, and people who don't. And I've talked to principals, a couple of principals, and they're like, you know what, the kids, because we have these things called pods, which is basically daycare. Mm-hmm. And that's needed for people who have to go to work. You have to put your kid in a fucking pod if you have to work. And so the pods, they say, are working fine. But then, and the parents who are screaming, we need to get our kids in school. I talked to the principals, and they're like, that kid has never done well. That kid is a problem because of the parents, not because they're not at school. It's because that kid's always been a problem. So the parents who are the loudest about getting their kids in, if you go talk to principals and teachers, they're like, yeah, that kid's, it's a fucking nightmare. So it's really what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a family dynamic, and all these people don't want to be around their kids or can't handle it or whatever the fucking situation is. So then they start putting out all this propaganda. And the propaganda is, you know, you see it, you'll see it in the media. It especially came out this week with some distancing stuff, but they start saying it's completely safe. All the studies say it's safe, that kids can go back to school if they wear masks and the rooms are ventilated, and that's it. Just wear masks and the rooms are ventilated. And so a bunch of us are talking. We're like, this doesn't make any sense. And then you read all the studies that they're alluding to. Well, they're not testing any asymptomatic kids at all. All of these tests where they say it doesn't spread in school. A kid came in with COVID, they found him, and then they quarantined everybody, and no one else had it. Well, how do you know they didn't have it? Kids have a huge asymptomatic rate. They're asymptomatic and they spread it. But if they don't have symptoms and you don't test them, then how do you know it's not? How do you say it's not spreading?
Right.
It's a total catch-22. And so they just keep saying it's not spreading in schools, and we go, who's testing the asymptomatic kids? And then no one responds. I've asked that question to 50 scientists who have said open schools. I've asked it to a doctor who came on and gave us a lecture. I just said, how do you, and just ignored. They all ignore it. They act like you didn't ask the question. I have not gotten that answer once. I always say, if the kids are asymptomatic when they get it, and you're not testing asymptomatic kids, how do you know it's not spreading? And they ignore me. God. And they did one study. It came Cobb County, Georgia, and it was at the end of February. and they tested all the asymptomatic kids, and it spread. And they found out in those kids' homes, 26% of the people who live with the kids had COVID because they don't show symptoms, and then they go into your house. And so what happens is then they take that data, if they're not testing asymptomatic kids, they take that data and they go, well, there was spread in the community, but it can't be traced to the school. So if a house has COVID and a kid goes to a school and they didn't test the kid who's asymptomatic, then they just go, well, that had nothing to do with the school.
What?
And they do one fucking study and they find out that a bunch of people got it. Yes, the whole school thing is fucking bullshit. They're not testing asymptomatic kids. They cannot say that it is not spreading. It's fucking insane. Most kids are asymptomatic. So we have another board meeting in which everyone's now mad because we had to choose whether or not to send our kid to school, right? I said, no, we're not sending our kid to school. They said 60% of people did, but then they're like, only 75% of people responded. So then you're like 60% of 75. So it's more like 40% or so, 45% who said, yes, they're sending their kid to school. Right. So it sounds like 45% of people are sending their kids to school. We have another board meeting, and this time all of us show up and yell at them, and they don't give a shit. There's a guy on the board. He's the guy that I had to yell at once to put a mask on his face. I yelled at him during a Zoom meeting early on in like May or something. I screamed at him, put your fucking mask on. Like, he just starts talking. He says, my father went and served, and he fought in a war. And my father fought in a war for 2 years. And if my father can do that, then teachers need to go back to school. And
what?
Right. So now we're comparing teachers to fucking people in Vietnam. Like, what in the fuck? What kind of fucking country is this? Like, how does that motherfucker get to sit on a goddamn school board and say this shit? And then we find out that guy is telling all the parents to attack the union on the school board. When parents contact him, he says, well, you need to go after the union because they're the ones stopping us from getting back into school the way we want. Because the union's fighting it. The union's like, this can't happen. We need to be vaccinated. We need to have all this stuff in place. There needs to be testing. And they're just like, no, we're going to do what we want. And they can do that because then Newsom passed his bill, and in it says you can ignore the unions. Completely ignore the unions if you want. You can go back to school. Fuck the unions. But the problem is that you can't ignore unions because they can just go on strike.
Which they've done in some certain cities. There's some cities and teachers are like, no, we're not doing this.
At Chicago and I don't know how LAUSD is voted, but yeah, no, there's places that are like, no, we're not going back to fucking school, and they shouldn't. And now everyone's getting mad at the teachers unions because they're like, well, that's the reason our kid's not in school. And there's shit like, so I've been doing deep dives into this, and there's a whole new thing, MERV 13 filters, which is like the most powerful filter you can have in your air conditioning system or whatever it is, and it circulates the air the fastest. And that's what you really need in a classroom. It's just air circulating and switched 5 times per hour so that it's just constantly moving. And I start looking into, I go, what is this MERV thing? And I research it. And you know why that's happening? A fucking union. The San Francisco Structural Engineers Union, who works in schools, was listening to the debate, and they said, look, guys, I've been working with air conditioning and HVAC units for years. MERV 13 is the solution you want. That's the filter you want. And then it got through, and it filtered to the school district, and the school district told people who work in the government, and then it was part of the official rules because of a fucking union. Because the unions are the things that are keeping people safe. They're the only ones fighting for safety. The school board is not doing it. They're just like, what's the least we can fucking do? It's the only people fighting for safety, and not just for teachers, for staff, for students. It's only the unions. The school boards don't give a shit. And the latest thing, which came out a couple of days ago, was all of a sudden, oh, there's a new study. And it says that you don't have to be 6 feet apart in schools. Kids can be 3 feet apart. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Fauci has recently said we should put on 2 masks. We should be wearing 2 masks. And now you're telling me they should be 3 feet apart. Do you see how that doesn't really fit together? And then you do a deep dive on that. Well, it's not a study. It was just a policy somewhere, a policy in which they didn't test asymptomatic kids. And now if you go on the news and you Google it, it's like, hey, we can do it. Because you know why? Because they don't want to spend money on schools, which they need to spend billions of dollars. They did before the pandemic. It was already shit. They don't want to fucking spend money. So they're fitting the science around the actual physical locations. That's all they're doing. They're getting ready for the fall to push all these kids back into schools by saying it's just fine to do 3 feet. And there's no scientific basis for it whatsoever. But they're all talking about it. If you go online and Google it, everyone's like, yeah, we can do 3 feet now. If I was fucking governor, you know all these businesses have got out of fucking business, these big box stores? Well, they're just sitting vacant. Take them over and turn them into fucking schools on a temporary basis. There's a shitload of empty buildings. Just put kids in them and fucking hire new teachers to stand. And so they're all super. I mean, if you want to put them back in school, that's what you fucking do. But they're not. They're doing the opposite. They're gearing the science around the buildings because they don't want to tax the rich and put all that money into making our kids safe. They're just going to send them to fucking die. And I'm sorry, but Germany, they're closing down schools left and fucking right because kids are coming down with it because of the new variants. Kindergartens are being overrun. Austria, Italy, you just go read about it in Europe. They're just getting fucking slaughtered. It is now passing the most amongst children all over Europe.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Who's now spreading the virus. And that may have been who was always spreading the virus. Right. We don't know because we weren't testing them.
Right. Because so many kids had it and were asymptomatic and had no idea. I mean, yeah, isn't Italy going back to shut down, and a couple other European countries have gone back to full shutdowns or close to it because
Italy, Germany's going back into lockdown. It's all over Europe. It's France, I think, is going back into lockdown. And every time they start testing kids, it's like, oh God, they all have it. So, it's really, like you said, it's the 2-party thing. And because Trump was so bad, everyone's just like, well, Biden's in there and he's following the science. No, he isn't. No one's following the science with the kids. No one is following the science. They just want to get kids back in school because they want to do the testing and they want to get people off unemployment and back working. But the problem is it's this hybrid thing. So it's actually making it more complicated for parents. Like if you're a parent and you have your kid at home and they're going to school online, is that better or worse than having to take your kid to school 2 days a week and then only for 4 hours as opposed to 6? So now you got to go figure out a way to pick them up. Like, how is that? How is your work schedule in that case? Oh, boss, I got to pick up my kid. It's noon. Like what on Tuesday? Like, it's just
this.
What the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. Like what? And honestly, I mean, it became pretty clear to all of us, a couple months into it last year, when there's just like the CARES Act and you're like, oh, this country, nobody cares. This is a banana republic. Nobody, the government doesn't give a shit about us. Trump really didn't give a shit. And now we've got the pleasant old man that doesn't kind of give a shit, but it's not as obvious. Like it's just this country, COVID-19 has exposed every problem that America had.
Every single problem. Every single problem. And it has accentuated the animosity between the 2 Armenian groups here in Glendale. Mm-hmm. Like you see them going at, like it's all accentuated and everything is just being highlighted. Like none of it works. I mean, nothing in America works. Everybody knows we needed to fix the schools before COVID came.
Right.
The class sizes are too big. They're already like 30, 36 kids in a lot of places. The schools are just dilapidated, particularly, in urban environments where we've just, fuck it. There's mold and there's, nothing works and nobody gives a shit because up in the suburbs, like my suburb, we have a PTA and everyone just throws in tons of money and things that you need get taken care of. Well, this battle isn't just for, down in Glendale, there's schools that are far worse off, and there's parents that are far worse off. They have a worse economic situation down there than we do up here in the hills. And so when I'm fighting this, I'm also thinking like, well, there's people down there that can't deal with this. Like, you have to make it safe for them to send it, because they're going to have to send their kids to school. Why aren't we doing testing? You remember when everyone was like, the way to stop COVID is 3 things: testing, tracing, and quarantining? Like, that was always a thing from the start. Well, now it's just quarantining and tracing for schools. And you're like, what the fuck does that even mean? Just do the rapid tests. The rapid tests cost $5 each. You give a kid a test in the morning, and then if it comes back positive, then you send them off to go get the official test that costs a lot more and is a thing. And then maybe you can catch some kids. I mean, rapid tests aren't 100%. They're like 60, but it's still a safety net. Like, you catch some kids that might have it. And they're just like, yeah, we don't need to do testing. What the fuck are you talking about? You don't need to do testing because it costs money. That's why you don't want to fucking do it. Like, we did this with the grocery workers and the fucking poultry plant workers. We just sent them off to die. And it's like, well, now we're going to do that with their children because they don't die as much. Well, some are going to fucking die and their teachers are going to fucking die. What are we doing?
It's mystifying. I mean, in this country, one of the things that got exposed in this country was how propagandized everybody is. And liberals like to go, yeah, I know, Fox and News and QAnon. Not just them. I mean, the liberals are they've been listening. Yeah. They think Russia hacked the last election. So they're, and they think, Joe Biden and Kamala are fantastic people. And they don't want to listen to the reality of them. They think Obama was great. They don't want to hear any of these realities. So nobody, I mean, when you talk to, and I know you do this because you've done shows internationally. You have friends and fans in other countries. When you talk to people from other countries, they go, "What is wrong with America? Like, literally, what is wrong?"
Yeah.
And
no, they literally talk to us like we're crazy people. They're just like,
"You guys are out of your
I wish everybody could talk to someone in another country because they literally are just like, what is going on? Like, it is concern, it is fear. They're just like, what is happening with you guys?" And remember, they've been watching us kill kids in schools for years. We don't give a shit. So of course we're going to send them back with COVID around because we sent them back with school shootings. We don't care about children's lives. How many kids died at fucking Stony Hook? Like 30 children, little fucking children. Nobody gives a shit.
Gunned down.
We just don't care.
No, we don't care. Okay, obviously, we don't care. We don't care about the 85,000 kids we've killed in Yemen. So why we don't care about our own kids? We don't care about Yemen. Yeah. I mean, look, and this is like Madeleine Albright back in 1994 going, 500,000 Iraqi kids dying because of sanctions. It's unfortunate, but it's necessary. She said that in a 60 Minutes interview. And she's revered, Ilhan Omar says she's one of her heroes. That's our big progressive. The squad loves somebody that sanctioned 500 kids to death. I mean, America is so out of touch. We are so insane. We don't like, and I knew this was going to happen when I posted stuff on social media, but mainly I knew it. And this is what happened on Facebook because there's just more dumb Gen Xers. Unfortunately, our generation is pretty fucking stupid. It's sad. I get the blame. Yeah, I can't sit here and blame the boomers when I look at what Gen X has just become. This just like they watched West Wing and thought, Obama was great or whatever. And I was like, how come Biden, is this was like a week or so ago. I go, he's bombing Syria, but he can't give us our $1,400 checks. And it's always some like, as Lee Camp calls him, some double-digit IQ comic, some road act that was hacky that nobody ever respected to begin with, who's like, oh, Graham, Biden had to respond or something. I fixed it for you. And I'm like, so you're defending war. You sound like a Republican.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they do. They sound exactly like Republicans. I mean, the Republicans we grew up with, they sound no different than them at all.
Right. Because that's what the Democratic Party is. I mean, the Democratic Party today is the Republican Party of 30 years ago.
Yeah, and 100%.
And we know this, like I remember this is probably 5-6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. Will Anderson, when he was living in LA, and he lived around the corner from me, and I went over to do his podcast. I think you and I were both on at one time. And he said, you know, the right-wing party of Australia is to the left of the Democrats in this party, in this country.
Yeah.
He goes, you know that, right? And that's, most countries are like that. Their right-wing crazy conservative party is like literally like as nuts as Boris Johnson and that party is. They look like a goddamn hippie commune compared to the Democrats here. Like it's, and I mean, we're politically homeless. Us, like lefty, socialist, progressive.
Yes.
We have nothing. There's no party for us. There's no one for us.
No one has any ideology in the Democratic Party. Like that's why their COVID response has been so shitty. And Newsom's a great example, and Cuomo, and they're not looking at it from an ideological perspective. They're looking at it from a how do we keep money rolling perspective. It's just capitalism. And so they're just shifting with the fucking wind, and like, oh, that guy, those people are mad at me for this, I'll do this now.
Yeah.
But it's why I bring up, like, why don't we taking over big box, stores and shit like that? That's a socialist solution. Let's just take shit over and put people into safe environments. If you want to put them back in school, like that's how you would do it. Let's just take some shit over and away from big businesses and straighten this shit out. But they're not looking at it from that perspective. They're trying to squeeze an answer into this using capitalism, and capitalism has no answer for this. It has no answer at all.
All capitalism. I mean, honestly, like COVID has really uncovered how awful capitalism is. I mean, really, like, and when you have a capitalist society like America, you don't have a society. You have the United Corporations of America. There's no, working for each other. There's no helping each other out. I mean, America went about 2 months of, yay, we're in it, we got to protect our vulnerable. And then by month 3, it was like, Nana had a good run, good luck. It was just like,
we started killing old people immediately. We're just like, well, they can't. This is just fuck that.
Yeah, but that's
how are we going to deal with them? Do you know why? Do you know why? No, this is another thing. The reason that the retirement homes were so bad is because of capitalism. So there's only a few like tenured nurses on a staff, and you have to work your way up to be a tenured nurse. So it takes years to get there. And then once you do, then you have a job, and you only work that job, and it is one home. Until you get there, you work at like 4 different nursing homes part-time to get the hours, and until a space becomes available, until you can become like a tenured nurse or care person or whatever it is in a retirement home. So the way our system is set up to squeeze the most money out of workers and not pay them benefits and everything they need created a massive spread, because those workers are going from one home to another, to another, to another, and they're just spreading it. So instead of just going, hey, here's the situation with old people in these homes, let's make these workers only work at one place, we just let it continue. And the old people died and died and died and died.
But Cuomo handled it well in New York.
Mass murderer. He is a mass murderer.
Mass murderer. I mean, there's not only what happened that all the stuff that's coming out now about what he did in the, in the senior centers is, and of course the corporate media is so biased for the Democrats. I mean, Fox is obviously, it's just a bias for the Republicans, but the other, I mean, CNN and MSNBC, it's unbelievable. And when people, it's not liberal. I mean, it's just awful corporate Democrat media, but they won't even talk about that. What was it? 10 or 20,000 hospital beds. He shut down over the period of 10 years leading up to this. All of his fights with the nurses union. I mean, our mutual friend completely ignored. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. And now like, oh, he's a sex creep. Oh, and this is another me too. Believe all women unless they accuse Democrats. Then maybe not so much.
We fucking knew it before he was elected last time. Like all the lefties were screaming about it. It's not like Lindsay just came out with this fucking story recently. She's been saying it for years, and we've been like, yeah, they don't give a shit.
No,
they don't fucking care.
Look at Tara Reid. They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
She was sexually assaulted by Biden, and nobody cares. And like so-called like liberal feminist women who are all screaming "Me Too" literally don't care about Tara Reid. They don't care
at all.
It's offensive.
I mean, you really have to like look, and you say we're not a society. We haven't been in society for years, and that was really Reagan's great project. But it's like, now we're at the point where we've gone through all these different workers, and now we're just like, well, let's sacrifice the teachers and the kids. And the really big part of it for me is, besides that they're not doing what it takes, they're like, we have classrooms where the windows don't open, and they're not going to unseal them. They're just going to, when we asked in that meeting, that dickhead school board guy who keeps his mask down, he was like, well, I mean, people could break in. And I've always heard that they seal shut windows because it's racism and they're scared of brown people breaking in. But I just heard it and I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's why you keep a window sealed shut, because someone might break in. And so that's ventilation. That'll keep kids alive. That'll keep teachers alive. But we have to deal with the fact that 25% of Americans or more don't believe in COVID. And so I'm not sending my kid to school. We're not sending a teacher to school into an environment where everyone's trying to be safe. We're sending them into an environment with suicide bombers.
Right.
Let me read you. This is from a Reopen group in our Cynthia Spears. My kids have been in pods the entire school year. The benefit of them being on campus and being with other kids outweigh the mask wearing. As soon as we get off campus, they take off those masks and don't put them on for the rest of the day. It's worth it for the socialization aspect. Here's another one. And so there's just tons of these. My kids and I don't wear masks. We never have, and they don't want to either. I have 4 kids from 23 months to 17 years old. They see their friends all the time. We have never quarantined. So that's who I'm pitting my kid into school with. It's not like it's a bunch of people who are trying to stay safe. It's what, 25% of them who don't think it's real. So how do you mitigate that? Like, so when they say everybody in the class, they say it's all going to be safe because the kids all follow the rules. And you're like, okay, well, here's kids that don't give a shit. So what are you fucking talking about? And that's what we're dealing with. Like, it's just like, no one gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit. And then they start fucking and lying about the goddamn science. It's 3 feet, 6 feet shit. All of a sudden, the asymptomatic kids don't matter. It's just like, this is what it came to us, right? It finally came to my life personally. It happened to the grocery store workers. It happened to all the guys working in the meat plants. It happened to all the people in restaurants, and it happened to all the fucking immigrants who are picking out in the fields because they all go and live in these terrible situations. It just went through every single sector of our society. And this is it. This is the last one that they haven't. The only people who are untouched are rich people who can afford to live in a box,
right,
and have their food delivered. Everybody else is being sacrificed. It's not a society. It's worse than not a society. There's no empathy whatsoever. Nobody cares about each other.
Oh, no, none. America's selfishness. I mean, we've been bred to be selfish, and this is, look, that the ruling class has done a fantastic job of propagandizing all of us through the media, and not just the news, but like, you look at your Hulu or Netflix or the recommended, It's all kill, revenge, selfish. The comedies, we know this, are all just like, every comedy is like, I'm a stupid, selfish fuck up. Like, that's every comedy, every comedian special on Netflix. I can't watch them anymore because it's just like, some of them are funny comics. They're good joke writers, but I'm like, I don't need another, like, oh, I'm a dipshit. Like, that's because you can't do any comedy calling out the ruling class. You can't. They won't give you a special. They won't give you a series. It's just like, and if it, it's like, if you're a guy, you got to be just some beer guzzling Yahoo, and a girl like, I like sleeping around or whatever. That's it. That's all you're allowed to say. And maybe a couple of Trump jokes, back a couple, before you left, it was like, you could do Trump jokes, but you couldn't be like, oh, Joe Biden is a warmonger. You couldn't say that. No. Like the 94 crime bill, Kamala Harris put 100,000 black people behind bars. That's not going to go in your Netflix special. And so because of that, we have insanity. We have insane people who then don't think COVID is real. And I understand like having some skepticism about this vaccine and skepticism about the big pharmaceutical company. I totally get that. Ask those questions. But just the like, nope, across the board, I'm like, all right, man. Like, I mean, I was a little skeptical 6-7 months ago. I'm like, are they rushing this thing? Is it too? And
then I think we all were.
Yeah, of course. As well, we
read about it, and you understand why it works so fast, and you go, oh, that all makes sense. Like it's something they've been working on for 10 years, and
because it's connected to SARS. Yeah, so they've been researching this for a long time. And then this woman the thing that sold me is when I found out the woman that created the RNA inhibitor thing a couple years ago, they created it, and the pharmaceutical companies went, her version's too cheap. It won't make us as much of a profit. So let's do the old version. That's why I was like, well, now I want the RNA one. Because that's the one I want, because a scientist did research and came up with something great, and the pharmaceutical companies went, it's not good for the bottom line. So and you do the research and you find out about it, and you're like, they're gonna make you have vaccine passports. Yeah, I've had one. I had to. There's these in LA. I went to this guy several times over. He's literally called the travel doctor, and you go there and you say, I'm going to this part of the world. He goes, all right, well, you need yellow fever and you need this and this, and they get this thing and they give you stickers and you have to show it in your passport when you came back. And like, here's malaria pills. I had to do all that shit. I went to all these crazy
it's a big
places.
Fucking deal.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy to me that's people are flipping out about it. And it's funny. I went online because, I've been reading about this. I've been reading scientists and what they're talking about. And sometimes it's like, well, everyone should be tested. All the kids should be tested. And the fucking parents that came out, my kid's not getting tested for COVID, just hundreds fucking yelling at her. And I'm just like, it's a fucking test, man. Like if you go fuck some girl in the back of an alley or whatever, maybe get tested for VD. Like, I don't know. Like it's a test, dude. It's a fucking test. Trust me, these people have had a lot of VD tests. Like, just go. It's just a fucking test. You hang out with someone who's got tuberculosis, maybe get a fucking test.
Yeah,
it's like a test, and it's against freedom now to get it. It's just this society is.
It's gone out of control in so many sense. First of all, and if you don't want to get it, fine, don't get it. I don't get the flu vaccine every year because I trust my immune system. And yet I've never stood outside of a CVS going, you're getting a vaccine, test me, man, you're crazy. I just say, that's your choice. That's my choice, whatever. Maybe you're a high risk group. My body is always in pretty good shape. I can fight off a flu vaccine. I don't know. Maybe when I'm 75, that'll change. But the craziness. And then people don't realize in the third world, all these poor countries are begging for this vaccine. They're begging.
Oh my God. I mean, Bill Gates is the devil.
Oh,
because that Oxford one they were going to make it public. They were going to be like, whoever can make it. And he fucking talked him into keeping it private. Do you know how many people that motherfucker killed by doing that?
Yes. So when people are like, I don't want the Bill Gates vaccine because he's going to murder us. No, this is how he's murdering people. He's not giving it to the third world. And there's parts of this world where they still have polio. There's a vaccine for that. It's been around for 70 fucking years. And we can't, because it's not profitable. This country can't afford it. So we're not going to give it to them. So it's such a thing of American privilege to say, I don't want this vaccine. They're begging for it in Mexico. They're begging, and Biden has.
It also I get that people make money, but it's going to harm us because variants are going to come.
Yes.
I mean, P1 is a great example. The one in Brazil, it apparently reinfects people. Like 35-40% of people that have already had it can get reinfected. And so that's now here in the United States. And it's going to happen again and again and again unless we vaccinate everybody in the fucking world. But again, it's just it's just racism and greed. It's those are a bunch of fucking brown people. I don't care. And then on top of that, my company's making money. But just the fact that we live in a world where everybody's not like, no, these vaccines need to go to everybody now. Everybody needs to get them. And it's not even that. That's a great example of like, where the fuck is MSNBC on this? Where's CNN on this? Just nothing. It's super dangerous to all of us, not just the people in those countries. Even for self-preservation, use your fucking brain.
Right. We should be sending hundreds of millions of vaccines to Mexico just because we share a border with them.
Yeah.
Like we should be vaccinating and, we should be doing that. And the people coming to the border and that should all be happening. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please hit the like button, the subscribe button, go to patreon.com/Graham Elwood and rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, where you can support the show. Also, I have a Bitcoin wallet, a Bitcoin Cash wallet, and an Ethereum wallet in the show notes. We're taking cryptocurrency. I have a Coinbase affiliation link. We're going to be getting on some other exchanges. So that's how you support the show. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. YouTube is unsubscribing us at an alarming rate. I have a PayPal button at GrahamElwood.com. I even have a Venmo at Graham-Elwood. There's a lot of ways to support our show. We are getting crushed by YouTube. We've dipped under 73,000 subscribers because of YouTube. Thanks for supporting what we do.